And thank you so much for joining us on another edition of At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson, and we're celebrating 150 years of service from the Rock Island District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We're going to talk about a little bit about the history, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about some of the requirements and responsibilities, including the locks and dams along the Illinois River, and some environmental issues that the Army Corps of Engineers takes care of. And we're going to do that with three individuals. The first I'd like to introduce is Doug Morgan. Doug is the lock master at the Peoria Lock and Dam, which actually isn't located in Peoria, but down by Pekin.
It's got a physical address of Creve Coeur.
Creve Coeur, all right. And then let me welcome the colonel who heads up the Rock Island District. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be here, H.
This is Craig Baumgartner. Thank you for being with us,
Thank
Colonel.
You.
And then also with us is Craig Hess. Craig is the Chief of Locks and Dams on the Illinois Waterway. What is the difference between Waterway and Illinois River?
The Illinois River actually doesn't start until below Joliet. The waterway consists of all the other tributaries up above Joliet. So we still have locks and dams within that environment. So it's a conglomeration of waterways that feed into the Illinois River. So that's why it's called the waterway.
And before we start talking about locks and dams, let's talk about what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Rock Island District comprises. It's an odd shape. Is there any way to describe this?
Well, the boundaries of a civil works district are always very interesting, and Rock Island District is a civil works district, so we're in the water resource development programs and project business. We're 78,000 square miles, most of which are in our responsibilities reside within the states of Illinois and Iowa, but also parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the northeast corner of Missouri. We are one of 6 districts on the upper Mississippi River, or on the Mississippi River itself. Our higher headquarters, Mississippi Valley Division, is actually located in Vicksburg, Mississippi, but we're one of 6 districts on the Mississippi River, and it takes all 6 of us, along with our higher headquarters, to manage the water resources in a watershed and Mississippi Valley that is the second largest in the world, only second to the Amazon. So it's pretty phenomenal duties and responsibilities within the Rock Island District. We operate across many different business lines. Navigation is a primary business line of the Rock Island District with our 20 locks and dams sites that we have within our area of responsibility, 12 of which are on the Mississippi River, upper Mississippi River, and 8 of which are on the Illinois River.
Well, let's talk about the locks and dams then.
Absolutely.
And the one in particular that we would be most interested in is the Peoria Lock and Dam. Can you describe the lock itself, dimensions and how it works?
Sure. It's a 600-foot long chamber. It's 110 foot wide. We have our upper and lower guide walls, which are approximately 600 foot in length each. The lock chamber itself has typical drop of about 11 feet if both pool levels are at normal stage. Typically, are they very rarely at normal stage, as you know, it fluctuates quite a bit there. The lock chamber itself is in use most of the time of the year. However, we do have a wicket dam, and the wicket dam itself is a separate entity with in relationship to most of the locks upriver. Now, LaGrange down south has a wicket dam as well, and what a wicket dam basically means is that we have 108 of these wickets that go across the river from the lock chamber to the far side. And when those wickets are in the up position, that's when we're holding back water, maintaining pool for navigation. However, when we get a lot of rain or we get a lot of melt from runoff in the springtime, water levels come up, we will actually drop those wickets and we'll open the navigable pass. And what that means is the lock chamber is no longer used to move traffic from above the lock to below the lock. They can actually take the open water around the lock. So there are times throughout the year where we're in that kind of a situation.
Tow operators like that.
Yes.
And the wicket is basically one of these things.
Yeah, simply put, yeah. I mean, it's made out of oak timbers right now, but they are looking at ways of making them out of composite material because they'll wear better and obviously they won't rot. But right now they're made out of oak timbers and iron hardware, and it's an old technology, but it's reliable. And there's 108 of these wickets that go across the river. So
let's talk about the fact that you said it's 600 feet long, And if I understand, a full 15 barge tow would need a 1,200 foot lock in order to go through as a unit.
Correct.
They have to break in half right now.
Yes.
Can you tell me the difference in time between a 1,200 foot lock and a 600 foot lock?
Sure. What we'll do in a normal, let's say like if we were able to lock them through as a single unit, as a 1,200 foot chamber, because the drop at our lock is only up to 11 feet, it doesn't take long for us to empty the chamber. So to have them come in or out and to either raise or lower the lock chamber and then have them go along on their way, you can do that in a half hour, 40 minutes tops. When we have to actually break the tow apart with a 600 foot chamber, what happens is you've now doubled or tripled that time, simply because of the fact that the deck crews have to take that tow apart. There's a lot of wires, there's a lot of rigging involved. And so they got to take that tow apart and actually split it in two, and they can only lock one part of that tow through. Then they have to turn the chamber around and pick up the second half of that tow. And then once they get that through, and then they'll put them back together. And once they push it back together, that deck crew that just took all the wires and ratchets apart will now have to put everything back together again. And depending on the experience of the crew, you can sometimes get the whole double lockage is what we call it. You can get the whole double lockage done in sometimes an hour and a half to 2 hours. But if the crew is less experienced, it can take considerably longer.
And there are 8 locks along the Illinois River.
That's correct.
So what is the prospect, and I don't know who has the answer to this or if anyone has the answer to this, but the hope would be that most, if not all of these, would be 1,200 footers at some point in time, just for the economic benefit.
If I could, so what Doug describes, just what occurs at Peoria Lock, and then you consider what he's described and the challenges and the time that it takes to break a tow just at one site, and then take that over 8 systems on the Illinois Waterway, and then include the Upper Miss, where there's almost all our 600-foot locks. It's pretty interesting. So there's a lot of time that can be lost, and there's lots of ways that we can become more efficient as a system. And there are opportunities out there. When I talk about navigation, I always like to talk about 4 strategic realities. One, of course, world demand for grain continues to increase. And so, obviously we're in the breadbasket of America. Grain is near and dear to the hearts of both the state of Illinois and Iowa, for example, and our ability to move that safely and efficiently, not only for the benefit of the American people, but also for world exports, critically important to bring value to the nation. That's just one. Second, the expansion of the Panama Canal. And are we able to realize any opportunities there? Third is the return to manufacturing, both to the United States and also to the Midwest. And then fourth, natural gas and oil production continues to increase, like what we have going on in the Balkan oil fields up in the Dakotas, for example. Our ability to move that precious commodity down the Miss and, of course, down to the Gulf of Mexico for refinement for the benefit of the American people, but also for world export. Those are just 4 strategic realities of many that exist. And so how do we capture and realize the potential benefits that are, so we can provide that additional value to the nation? It really takes 3 different things. One, to get our locks and dams that are deteriorating, and risk continues to increase each and every year that passes. Built in the 1930s with a 50-year design life. We did major rehabilitations in the 1980s, which when you do a rehabilitation of a lot, that typically will extend the lock shelf life, if you will, for about 25 years. But we did that in the 80s. And so if you look at just rehabilitations alone, we're already, of our 20 sites across the entire Rock Island District, 14 rehabilitations behind schedule. It means we've already gone beyond that 25-year extension of shelf life, if you will, of our critical infrastructure. So we have not received any major rehabilitation dollars in the Rock Island District in quite a few years, and now we're behind. The second one is operations and maintenance. We've done pretty well in terms of our annual budgets for operations and maintenance. It does allow us to do meet our basic maintenance needs, but it can be a challenge because although we are doing some major component replacement on various locks, like our miter gates, for example, The challenge is we're only receiving, in the current year's operations and maintenance dollars. We're not receiving rehabilitation dollars as I described, and we're falling behind schedule. And then the last thing is we're not adding any potential improvements to existing sites. There is an authorization called the Navigation and Ecosystem Sustainability Program, or NESP, authorized in 2007. We have not received any construction appropriations or funding towards that program. Why that program is important to navigation in the Upper Miss is that would add 7 new locks to include Peoria on the Upper Mississippi River, 1,200 foot in length, to capture the benefits that Doug mentioned.
So Craig, if and this may require a crystal ball, but what happens, let's say money does become available for Peoria Lock and Dam to go 1,200 feet. What happens to traffic on the Illinois River?
Well, depending on where the actual site for construction is placed, hopefully we could choose a location. If it's not right on the inside of Peoria Lock and Dam, we can still keep the navigation channel open. And especially during the high water season when the wickets are down, navigation wouldn't be impacted. Of course, there are times when you can't have the best of both worlds there, and navigation would have to be restricted. During our major maintenance periods throughout the year, we normally have to close down for a short period of time to perform current maintenance on the projects that are out there. For instance, when Peoria is scheduled to get new gates, we can normally put in new gates in the wet, and that would cause only maybe a 3-day shutdown or a 4-day shutdown to actually place new miter gates. With the new gates coming in, we might actually, we're looking at possibly closing for up to 30 days, in which case we can dewater the entire lock chamber, place the new gates in the dry, and then do an inspection to see how that lock chamber is holding up.
But the economic impact on the tows is significant.
It is significant. However, they realize that without us doing these upgrades and these maintenance projects, we could lose, or we could have a catastrophic incident where that lock is closed down for a much longer time. By us projecting, planning, and coordinating with the river carriers, we are able to tell them years ahead of time of when our planned maintenance is going to occur, and they're able to push those commodities earlier or later in their travel cycles.
Doug,
Therefore, okay.
Did you want to add, Colonel?
I was just going to add and emphasize something that Craig just talked about is the very early on, I'm talking about in years in terms of projecting out the work that's required. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to anticipate what funding we'll get in X number of years out, but knowing what the type of work we need to do by location and closely coordinate that with our industry partners is absolutely critically important, including the Coast Guard. Secondly, too, is if we're talking about adding an additional lock, that would be adjacent to the existing lock. So, of course, we would still be able to pass navigation for the economic benefits of the nation. If we're talking about a major rehabilitation, though, of course, and we are a single point of failure at all locations on the Illinois waterway and on the Upper Mississippi. So if we do a major rehabilitation, there are extended closures that we have to coordinate closely with industry. I will say, though, one of the things that the Corps is looking to continue to do, and we're always looking for ways to do that better, is to make sure we're grouping projects and closures at the same time to minimize any potential impact to our nation and obviously through our industry partners.
You communicate, Doug, with the riverboat companies. You know when tows are going to be coming to the lock and dam. So does that help you coordinate when they arrive? Because you don't want 3 arriving at the same time.
Well, right, and and we have shift heads who are on duty, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the shift heads are very well experienced in, queuing up those vessels and coordinating the traffic as it's coming through the chamber. Really, it's based off of first come, first served basis. There are a few opportunities where, let's say, like some type of commercial passenger vessel may show up, or some federal boat, be it the Coast Guard or a Corps of Engineers boat, comes up, they may ask for a priority lockage. But as far as the industry is concerned, basically it's on a first come, first served basis. And what that means by first come is at the lock itself, we have what we call our arrival point. And that's located a mile above and a mile below the lock chamber. Once they reach that arrival point, they'll call in and they will ask, if the lock chamber is available and how soon they can get through. So that's, essentially it's how that works.
Before we leave the subject of locks and dams and tows, what is a typical, what kind of product comes up and down the Illinois River?
Illinois River is mostly, on the southern side of the Illinois River, it's mostly grain. For instance, over the last year in 2015, there were over 7 million tons of grain that went through the Peoria Lock facility. As you get up farther north, it switches a little bit from grain into more coal, more petroleum products up in there. And it just depends on the location of the river where you're at. But of course, from central Illinois on down, of course, throughout the Mississippi, it's heavy in the grain.
Okay.
If I could add real quick, as I do see strategic opportunity in the future for the locks and dams here on the upper Mississippi River. This past March 2016, there was a intercoastal way, inland waterway, national capital investment strategy proposed by the Corps, worked very closely with navigation industry, and then went up through the Assistant Secretary of the Army and his office and OMB, and then delivered to Congress. The great thing about that report is a few things. One, you see a recognition that much of the work to date has been on the Ohio River, not within the Rock Island District or in the Mississippi Valley, but in our Lakes and Rivers Division. Much needed work that's occurring there. What you can see in that capital investment strategy that looks out the next 20 to 25 years is a shift to the Mississippi River. The good news is LaGrange, for example, in that document has LaGrange Lock and Dam as ranked #1 for major rehabilitations in the nation. 6 of the 8 mentioned rehabilitations across the nation are right in the Rock Island District in that document. So that's one thing I like to mention. So we have a strategic document that looks out how are we going to prioritize, or it gives the priorities of how we're going to allocate funds in the future.
So all we need is money.
Well, and so that was my second point. So for rehabilitations and also major improvements like NEST, we talked about adding an additional lock to the system, a 1,200-foot lock like we already discussed. Both of those require funds from what we call the Inland Waterway Trust Fund. The good news is we see the Inland Waterway Trust Fund starting to rise, and that's mainly attributed to 3 things. One is the major project that is occurring on the Ohio River called Olmsted right now is coming relatively nearly to a close. So when that closes, that frees up funds to go elsewhere. Secondly, the cost share of that project just changed in legislation from 50-50 federal to 1585. So the good news is that's increasing funds, staying in the trust fund. And the last thing is the fuel tax. Fuel tax, diesel tax increased from 20 to 29 cents. So we have a rising trust fund. The big question is the federal match, because it does take a 50-50 match to release funds for these type of projects.
So tow operators do pay a tax much like truckers or cars do on roads.
There's a diesel fuel tax on the water. Yes,
Okay.
That's correct.
Let's turn from that to environmental issues. The Army Corps just finished the first of 3 islands here just north of Peoria. And that's really environmental in nature. I want to make sure that the audience understands that that is not a question of let's move the silt out of the Illinois River. That is actually an environmental issue.
Yes, so ecosystem restoration is a major mission of the Corps of Engineers. Our nation expects us to wear our environmental engineer hat on behalf of the nation, of course. Within the upper Mississippi River, there are 2 programs that the Rock Island District is responsible for on behalf of the upper region. The first one is the Upper Mississippi River Restoration Program, or UMRR, and the second one is ecosystem restoration under Section 519, which is specific for the Illinois waterway and the Illinois River Basin in all 33,000 square miles. The projects you mentioned, the Peoria Upper Islands, of course, there is 1 island complete, 2 projected to be complete above and beyond that. The challenge under the Section 519 program, of course, it's tied to a non-federal sponsor. In this case, it's the state of Illinois, specifically Illinois Department of Natural Resources. In the absence of a passed budget within the state of Illinois right now, the program is on hold because they cannot release the funds to meet the cost share obligations of that. So right now we're on hold for any future work on projects like you just mentioned or any other projects that are in the queue.
Let's look south down by Pekin. There are 2 projects there. One is complete, as I understand it, and then the South Pekin project is not complete.
So there's a total of 4 projects that have been completed under the Section 519 that I was describing under ecosystem restoration. We have 2 that are currently in feasibility study for future construction. Obviously, we do a study, and then that study will determine whether we're going to recommend construction in the future. And then we have Pekin South that is also sitting in the queue. Still some design work that's yet to be done. But is authorized for construction, but the design work needs to be completed. And then, of course, it's about a $7.8 million project if we were to get cost share funds allocated towards that so we can implement it and construct that project.
And once again, that's environmental. That's a deep water fish habitat.
Almost all of the ecosystem restoration type projects we do typically are either for fish or wildlife habitat restoration.
I had an opportunity to visit Arsenal Island, Mississippi, up in the Quad Cities. There's a lot of history up there. Can you tell me a little bit about what's up there? I know there's a huge weapons museum up there. In fact, I know that because I was there.
Yeah, the Arsenal's been around for a long time. It was originally, an outpost, one of the forward outposts for the United States military. Eventually, it turned into a prisoner of war camp during the Civil War. The history is extensive there. Of course, in World War I, it eventually became a manufacturing facility and has been such ever since. My father worked up there for 30 plus years and retired there, and most of my family members have worked there one time or another. It's an outstanding facility, and it offers a lot to the community that supports it, and it supports the community as well.
You know a little bit about the history of the Arsenal Island at all?
Well, I was born in Rock Island, grew up in the Quad Cities, and I had a lot of relatives work there. My mom worked there. I had a sister work there. I've got some in-laws that work there, an aunt. So it was just common when you were growing up in that area that schools would take you on tours there, as a field trip. And so, yeah, you got to learn a lot about the history of the Arsenal. And a lot of what Craig was talking about is a lot of stuff that I'd learned. I was really fascinated with the history during the Civil War, with the Confederate prison that was on site, is where the golf course is now. I do know that, and also the Confederate cemetery that's on site as well, and all that. But I mean, it's very interesting history there, and it's fascinating.
Parts of that are open to the public.
Yes.
And there, up in Ottawa, there's a visitor center that's open to the public. Real briefly, what is that?
Well, currently we have a visitor center on the Illinois waterway and one on the upper Mississippi waterway, or on the upper Mississippi River. The visitor center is run by the Corps of Engineers, and we have Corps of Engineers rangers who operate the facility. There in Ottawa specifically, this time of year becomes very popular because of the bald eagle watching. The visitor center is located right across the river from Starved Rock State Park, and it's a nesting site or a roosting site for bald eagles. And there you can view not only natural habitat and see displays of all the animals and creatures from the local environment, but you can also see history pieces from the navigation industry. There's actually, inside the visitor center, there's actually a cabin, the skipper's cabin off of an old vessel that moved up and down the waterway.
Okay, and one real briefly, I want to get in levees.
Okay.
Whose responsibility is it for repair and maintenance of levees along the Illinois River?
So there's many layers to that question. It starts
And you're going
off
to have to
by-
be brief in answering this.
So it starts off with the determination, was the levee federally built or federally improved? And if so, obviously then there's a federal interest for that particular levee system. Aside from a handful of levees here in the upper Mississippi River that we're responsible, we have about 146 different levees within the Rock Island District alone. Only a handful of those are federally built levees, federally maintained. The rest of the levees on the upper Mississippi are actually federally built or federally improved, and then local sponsor operated and maintained. In terms of responsibility, of course, in terms of operations and maintenance, in most cases it is the levee sponsor or the municipality that might be responsible for a particular flood wall, for example. We have different programs, our levee safety program, world-renowned, that we obviously have that. We also have the rehabilitation inspection program that the Corps goes out and does annual inspections of these different levee systems that are where there's a federal interest. We make sure we understand the conditions and also the risk. And one of the things that we're focused on that I'll highlight, we have always been focused on that, but always looking to improve and formalize the way we take levee safety risk communication and make sure that the broader community understands the risks associated with that particular levee. It's a shared responsibility. When we talk about floodplain management, of course, the primary responsibility is at the state or local level for that.
And with that, we have run out of time. Thank you so much to Doug Martin, who's a lockmaster down at the Peoria Lock and Dam, to Colonel, and also to Craig Hess, who is takes care of the Illinois Waterway in locks and dams, and then to Colonel Baumgartner, who is the commander of the Rock Island District of the Army Corps of Engineers, located in the Quad Cities. And they are celebrating 150 years of service at the Rock Island District. We're going to get even older next time on that issue because we're going to look back 325 years at the history of Peoria. Yes, 2016 is the 325th birthday of the city of Peoria. We'll talk about that next time when you join us on At Issue.